This is Abnormal Entertainment.
2, 3, 4. Walked into the tunnel just to find the light. Hunted for old demons, looking for a fight. Looked up at the stars, seemed to go forever. There must be a way, it all fits together. Fell into the quicksand, held on to the vines. Never could quite color, stay within the lines. Feels like I have wings, I can fly wherever. This is just a way, it all fits together. Finally saw the world through rose-colored glasses. Gonna share my journey to small and large masses. Give up on my life, no sir, me never. This is how I put it together. This is how I put it together. This is how I put it together.
Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Put It Together. I'd like to start as usual thanking my producer, Mr. Kevin Moyers, for all his help and support. Thank you, sir. Inviting everybody to check us out at abnormalentertainment.com. Also on the Put It Together podcast page on Facebook. And I hope you're enjoying the new theme song that we have playing at the beginning of the show. Thanks to Ryan Kalama for his help on that. Today, I am back at Dr. Lochner's office. You guys might have remembered an interview that I did for my old show, the HIV show. Well, now we're here talking to him more about his life and how he puts it together. Hi, Doctor. How you doing?
Hi, Danny. I'm fine. Thank you. How are you?
I'm good. So I'll be honest, because I think most people have this love-hate relationship with doctors. I love you because you've been really good to me over the years, but I hate it when I get in trouble because I'm not doing what I'm supposed to do. But I came to you, I guess, for the first time about 6 years ago, maybe 7.
Mm-hmm. I think so.
And I wasn't bad, but then you've been with me through some of the harsher things, the cancer and the ostomy surgery, and so we've been through a lot together.
Well, you've been the hard part.
but you've been there right for me. I mean, I think that as patients, we can go through a lot physically and mentally, but if we don't have a good support system, and definitely doctors are part of the support system.
Yeah, some a piece of it.
Yeah, if we don't have a good doctor that listens to us and scolds us when we need to, or calls us out on our BS when we ask to, then what's the point? You just don't have a good relationship. But I think that from the beginning, we pretty much...
Yeah, you're like that. Uh-huh. It helps. It's my job. It's more fun when you're interested in your own health and well-being. Yeah.
So, but you definitely pushed me a little bit. And sometimes I walk out here, I'm like, I'm not coming back to Dr. Lochner. And then I'll think about it like,
I don't blame you.
Yeah, he's right. Okay, he's right. But let's get started with your story. How you put it together.
Wow. Well, the idea of being a doctor was first planted in my mind by my mom when I was about 4 years old in the 1950s.
Wow.
I remember my mom, exactly. I remember my mom saying to me, I was sick a lot when I was a kid, and she said to me, you know how when you're sick, the doctor comes to the house, it was the 1950s, and will give you like a shot of antibiotics if you need it. And when you grow up, you're going to have to work for a living. This is the 1950s mentality. So she said, don't you think it would be good if you did something like that? She said, they're always going to need doctors. There's always going to be sick people. And you get to do a job that you get to help people. Uh-huh.
Wow.
And yeah, and it's funny, I have 2 older brothers, and neither of my parents had any kind of vision like that for me. I don't know if my mom saw something in me or what, but so I remember the two things that I said that I was going to be since I was very young. One was that I was going to grow up and be a doctor, and the other one was that I was going to be a mommy. Okay.
Oh, okay. That's pretty cool.
I couldn't see myself being a dad for some reason. I didn't know exactly what was underneath there at that point, but yeah, I didn't want to be a woman. I just
wanted to be the mommy.
Yeah,
and I guess
I thought it would. And I also liked it because it made people laugh when I said that. And laughter is a big part of medicine, you know.
But were you one of those kids like we play doctor or we play mechanic, or did it make sense then, like have a doctor's set or?
I mean, I maybe had one of those, but I don't think that was ever really it. It was probably more about talking to people. I remember this first place that we lived in those years was a little dead-end street in Pittsburgh, in the Pittsburgh area, is where I'm from. And my mom would always tell me that later that if she couldn't find me, she knew that I was probably sitting on the front porch of one of our neighbors, usually the old people, talking with the old people.
Really?
Sitting on their milk box. This was also a time when the milkman used to come and deliver milk, and everybody had on their front porches a little refrigerated, somewhat refrigerated, it wasn't electric, but somewhat refrigerated, kept things cool, box that the milkman would come and put the milk in. You know,
really?
And take out the old bottles.
Wow.
And this is the 1950s. It's not that long ago, but
yeah.
It's all relative. It's a long time ago, but yeah.
Wow.
So, yeah. So I guess I like talking with people, and I guess I particularly like talking with older people since I was really young. Yeah.
Wow. And that idea of that your mom put in your head, did it carry with you, like, as you went through school and high school?
Yeah, it's always what I thought I was going to do, was to be a doctor.
Okay.
And I certainly, my studies were always, that. And I found that luckily not only did I want to do that, but I was pretty good at the things you need to be good at to be a doctor, mainly the science field, science and math, and those things really did interest me. I'm lucky that I did well in it. All of our brains aren't, so you can dream that you're going to be a doctor, but if you don't have the right skill set for that, it might not have worked out.
I was going to ask, that was your goal, but was that your dream or your passion, or did you have something else?
No.
No, wow, that's...
No, that was, it's, as much as anything, it's what I always said I was going to do, yeah. And so through college, I, was pre-med, and I took, the hard courses, the make or break courses at that time. This would have been like the mid-1970s, were like the math and science courses. Okay. And again, I did pretty well on those, not the best. My GPA when I graduated college was a 3.4, so
that's pretty good.
Not great though. Yeah. And at that point, what was happening in the 70s was there was a big affirmative action movement. It's when it was really first born. Right. And so, for whatever reason, whether it was my grades or whether it was because I didn't appear, and I got a couple of interviews, but in the interviews for medical school, I didn't get accepted. Those places where there was I didn't seem like I was genuinely that interested in medicine, or maybe it's just because I seemed somewhat immature, which I was at 17 or 18, and or whether it was because I was not in one of the several minority groups, including women, that were very much part of the affirmative action movement of the 70s. Yeah.
So that affected a lot of...
I don't know if that's which or all of those is why I didn't get into medical school the first time I applied, but I didn't. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
So was that discouraging, or...
Yes, but this is also in the 70s, so I'll be totally candid. So I was, at that point, just realizing that I was gay.
Okay.
And it's okay to talk about that?
Yeah,
okay,
of course.
Okay. And in the 1970s, it was a different time, when it wasn't talked about. And I just knew that I was different. And at that point, I didn't know if I could be gay and be a doctor. Yeah. Or maybe there was something about being gay that would preclude me from being a doctor, So I thought maybe it was just kind of meant to be. And I was living in Pennsylvania, is where I grew up. And at that point, I had a friend that had moved from Pittsburgh area out to California, Southern California. And he said, you should come out to California. And so Nick was the only person I knew when I moved out here to California, and took a job initially. If I had to do something, I had a biochemistry degree, so I took a job as a lab technician up at UCLA.
Okay.
And they were it was cancer research.
Oh, wow.
And and I did that for about a year, and I liked it okay, but the pay was terrible. I remember my pay was $701 a month.
Wow.
Now this was 1977, but still. And so I had a friend that owned a restaurant, and so he said, why don't you become a waiter at the restaurant? So I started doing that in my evenings to supplement my income, and then I thought even though I kind of enjoyed my work at UCLA as a lab technician, the pay was so horrible that I knew that I couldn't do anything with it. Yeah. So another friend said to me, why don't you go into real estate? Doesn't everybody do that at one point in their life? So I went and got my real estate sales license.
Wow.
Yeah. And tried that for about a year, actually about 3 years off and on. And I was never great at it. And I really didn't find it fulfilling at all. For me, it's fine for some people if that's what works for them. But I remember that the training we went through in real estate, a lot of it was you had to make so many contacts.
Right.
To get a listing or a sale to make X number of dollars. And I was just never driven by money. It just, I just found the whole thing so empty. And but I was doing it for a while and somewhat surviving. And then in the early 1980s, there was the economy was really bad about the time Reagan got elected.
Right.
So about the time you were born, probably, right?
I was born in 1970.
70? Okay,
Yeah.
So Reagan was, so you were only 10 when
10 years
Reagan
old,
was
yeah.
elected. Okay. So interest rates on home mortgages, I don't know if you know what they are right now. They're about 4.25% right now for a home mortgage if you're going to buy a home right now, what your interest rate you're paying. At that point, interest rates went to 16%.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, which means that most people were having a very hard time qualifying for a loan to buy a house, to get a mortgage. So I realized that I needed to do something else. That was no longer paying the bills now.
Right.
Yeah. So during college, I had worked as a lab technician in a hospital lab. And so I took a job at Long Beach Memorial Hospital as a phlebotomist. So I went around the hospital and drew blood.
Got it.
And
that's why you're so good at that.
Yeah, most of the time. You're kind. Thank you, Danny. Yeah. So got lots of practice there, though. And once I was back working in the hospital, I thought, you know what? I really still like the medical field. It really felt. So at that point, my plan was to pursue nursing because I figured it'd be easier to get into nursing school.
Okay.
And there were a couple of nursing prerequisites that I hadn't taken. I had never had a microbiology class, and I don't know how, but somehow I missed that in college. So I took that, and then I took some anatomy classes, and I somewhere along the way realized that for me, I wasn't going to be challenged enough by nursing. Now, nursing has changed as a career a lot from what it was back then.
Okay.
Because this is the early 80s, right? And, nurses do a lot more things now. They're nurse practitioners and nurse anesthetists, that basically they function very much like a doctor does. But back then it wasn't the case so much, yeah. So, so I thought, this isn't going to work for me being a nurse. And so I thought, okay, I'm going to go back to pursuing medical school. So I took a lot of other classes, and just to keep my mind sharp and to learn new things, and I had to retake the medical college admission test. It's called the MCAT. And then eventually, this is a long story to get to this place, but then I was lucky enough in 1984 to get accepted to medical school. So
I didn't know that.
My third time applying to medical school that I got.
I didn't know it was that much of a process to get accepted into medical school.
Yeah.
You can't just say, I've done my...
Right, it's very competitive because I think there are 110 or so medical schools in the country, maybe more now, but something, maybe 125, I don't know. But yeah, it's very competitive. And understandably, you want people in general that have the best grades, that are ideally the smartest. I don't think that I'm that smart, obviously. It took me 3 tries to get into medical school, but I love what I do, luckily. And so that was it. So that's starting medical school.
That's hard.
Yeah. And
were you still, now that you've been, this is the 70s and 80s, although things are getting a little more open after the sexual revolution of the 60s, were there still a bit concern in the 80s about being gay and in the medical field?
Yes. I remember in medical school there was a national organization called the Medical Student Association, MSA. And so they have chapters at each medical school, and they have sub-chapters, like if you're interested in some specialty as a medical student, you could do that. And they also had a chapter for gay and lesbian medical students.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So I was active in that. I tried to get that started in my own class. I remember actually getting quite a bit of ridicule about it.
I was going to ask.
Yeah. There was most people were kind of whatever. But I remember one guy in particular. So we all used, it was 140 people in the class, and we all did the same thing together, right? Whether we're in lectures together or in our little individual study groups together, but 140 people in this class, we all did the same thing together, right? So we got to know each other pretty well. So it happened that one of my jobs was that I was the proofreader of the class notes. Okay. Each person was assigned to take notes for a particular lecture, and then somebody proofread, they typed it up or whatever. This is the early days of computers. Somebody typed it up, and then I would proofread it, listen to the recording, and make sure that it all kind of jived. Yeah. So my handwriting got known pretty well in class because sometimes I would just make little corrections in the margins, okay? And so it happened that, and as a side but related, that, and this used to happen more, sometimes when people are standing at the urinal in the men's room, they'll write things on the wall, right? I don't know. It probably happens in women's too. They don't do standing, obviously, but probably, I don't know if they do too. But it used to be a lot then. Now with the internet, it's probably different. But one day, somebody had posted up, somebody had written on the wall, above the urinal, I guess while he was peeing, and this was the class, so this is the one that we all kind of used, and it said, I don't care about all this stuff. I just hate gays.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And I had a pretty hunch of who it was in my class. And So then I thought about it for a little. I thought, I'm going to have a really thoughtful response. And so the next day I went back and I wrote on the wall, I said, choose which one or more of the following categories you belong to. One was closet case. A lot of times people who are closeted are the first to criticize somebody who's out and gay.
Right.
One is religious zealot. Oftentimes people who are just religious without thinking, don't bother to think for themselves, excuse me, have their own convictions that they're taught about a group that's different, like gay people.
Right.
You know, our lives would be simpler if we'd been made straight.
Right.
Yeah, we didn't choose this. You know,
Yeah.
the choose is whether you accept it or whether you live life pretending to be someone you're not and ended up hating yourself. Yeah.
Exactly.
So, religious zealot and mindless. And so it happened that I was stopped in the cafeteria by one of my classmates who said, you know, I recognize your handwriting on the wall, and I noticed the discussion that was going on. And I said to him, yeah, I said, obviously, I have pretty strong feelings about this. And I happen to have known that his roommate, this friend that I was talking with, that his roommate who was Mormon, by the way, was the guy who started this conversation.
Wow.
Yeah, and so I said to this friend in the cafeteria, I said, I suspect that it's your roommate, and I won't name his names, but was the one that really instigated this. And I said, it just really makes me, we're educated people here. You know, we've already had college educations. Why somebody's reacting like this? Well, so this friend goes back and tells his roommate that I said this. And his roommate, called me that night.
Wow.
And admitted to me that he was the person writing that stuff on the wall. And ended up apologizing.
Wow.
To show what a big person he ultimately was. Yeah. He went on to explain some kind of a story that I don't totally believe, and there was an end to this, that didn't totally believe at the time, that he had a friend that was engaged to a girl, and the guy realized that he was gay and broke off the engagement, and really hurt his friend. And so that was the justification for his feelings. Okay?
Which goes to prove that I have a friend stories go back a long time. It's nothing new.
Right. Do we need a pause? Okay.
That's pretty insane. I mean, dude.
So that's not the end of the story.
Okay,
So,
go ahead.
That's more of the story. So we restarted it? Okay. So he said, this classmate that had written this on the wall said, I hope that we can become better friends with time. And I want you to know that I really hope that you can consider me a friend. So we did have a different relationship. We've been kind of cold shoulder before that, and we did become more friendly. And in fact, when this Mormon friend classmate of mine got married, he invited me and my then partner and several other classmates, but as an aside, but to the reception. We couldn't go to the wedding because we're not Mormon, but we went to the reception. And it was very nice.
Wow.
And I kind of lost track of this person because we, in residency, once medical school was over and we're residents, we go, depending on your specialty, we go different directions.
Right.
Fast forward 15 years. At our 15-year class reunion, the person who organized it said, we'd like to hold a moment of silence for the two class members that we have lost.
Oh, wow.
And one of them was this friend that had written on the wall.
Wow.
And he ended up going into anesthesia and having, as a lot of anesthesiologists, or not a lot, but they're kind of more likely to have happen, he got involved in drugs himself and ended up married to this woman, but dying of a drug overdose.
Oh.
And my suspicion is that he was probably closeted himself, and that probably is how this all came to, putting all the pieces together. I may be wrong, but that's my strong suspicion, that he had some self-hatred about it. Especially because Mormon is such a, the Mormon religion, as much I don't know a lot about, I'm certainly no expert, but it's an identity. It's not even just a religion, it's an identity. It's bigger than a religion.
Yeah. I've known several ex-Mormons. And
it's very difficult.
Even then, even after they leave, there's still that identity for
right.
them.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's
so so sad for him. Excuse me. I hope if there's a heaven that he finds peace or has found peace. But anyway, so back to the non-gay stuff. Can we pause for a minute?
Sure.
Sorry.
Wow. So go ahead. I'm sorry.
So in the first year, skip back to the first year of medical school. They have a career specialties day where a lot of the doctors, faculty members talk about their individual specialty. Because we're first year medical students, you know, some of us are going to end up being surgeons, some of us are going to be radiologists, some are going to be emergency room, some are going to be psychiatry. And so specialists in these different didactics, different specialties, doctors come and talk about what it's like to do their specific medical specialty. And one of the talks that I went to was a doctor who ended up becoming my medical school advisor and still friends, just amazing human being, Dr. Alexandra Levine. And her specialty at that point was lymphoma, which is a cancer of principally of the lymph glands. And she, in 1984, so this was the early days of AIDS, was starting to see this, all of a sudden, huge number of gay men that were coming down with lymphomas, with cancer of the lymph glands. And a lot of other gay men that just had these big lymph nodes. And at that point, it had just been, GRID had been recognized, but it was still called the gay-related immune deficiency. It just at about that point got named the virus. They found the virus in 1984, and it was called HDLV3 initially, and now we call it HIV-1. But anyway, so it was the very early days of HIV. And I remember asking Dr. Levine how she managed to deal with a medical specialty where so many of her patients die. And I remember clearly, this is more than 30 years ago, exactly what she said. She said, sometimes I have to stop and remind myself that when these patients come to me, that they already have cancer. I haven't done anything to cause it. And hopefully whatever I do makes their life better, makes them better. And if they die, they were going to die anyway. Yeah. Wow. Yeah, that's exactly how I felt at that moment when I first met her. Yeah. She's just an amazing human being. People would describe Dr. Levine, this isn't about me, it's about Dr. Levine, but as an aside, people would say about Dr. Levine that she's the kind of doctor, when you as a patient, if you go in to see her, when you come out, you feel like you're happy to have cancer because you get to have an experience in life that not just everyone gets to have. She's that much of an optimist in a way. She puts the best possible spin on it. Yeah. So, but anyway, so back to, between first and second year of medical school, I worked with Dr. Levine doing a research study where we mailed out a questionnaire to all the doctors in the Los Angeles County Medical Association. Okay. And it was asking, because we recognized that there was this huge wave of people with HIV/AIDS just about to hit, and we wondered who was going to take care of all them. And so we passed out this questionnaire to try to figure that out.
Wow.
And we got a lot of doctors that responded, I don't want to have anything to do with gay people. I don't want to deal with HIV and the whole dying thing. and so there was a lot of that, a lot of reaction. We realized that the people who were most likely to be willing to deal with it were gay physicians.
Okay.
And people who were infectious disease, because they were largely on the front line of dealing with HIV. So it was about that time when I realized that there was this huge need. My first several personal friends were starting to die at about that point in 1985, 86. And I just realized that there was kind of a calling there, that there was a place that I was going to be needed to step in. Yeah.
Now, obviously, you can answer for the doctors, but do you think, was there a fear? I'm going to use the word fear. Was there a fear of treating gay people, or was it a lot of doctors didn't know how to handle death?
Probably more the gay issues. Some of them didn't want to deal with death, or some of them said that it was a combination of both.
Okay.
Yeah, for some of them it was the one, some of it was the other. Yeah.
Wow.
But there was definitely a lot of aversion to it. And back in the 1980s, there were no good treatments for HIV. You know, I mean, it basically was a death sentence.
So was that your motivation then, particularly, that pushed you into the HIV?
Right, because I saw that there was a need, and there were a lot of doctors that were averse to the idea of dealing with it. Yeah.
Okay.
And I started to see friends that were dying from it, and I thought, this is just where I need to be. Yeah.
What was the general, if there was a general mood, what was the overall mood in the medical field with the doctors that were going to treat people with HIV?
I guess I can best answer that by saying, I worked up at LA County USC, and that's called 5P21, the AIDS clinic up there. And in the really bad years, especially in the early 90s, before good drugs came along to treat HIV, virtually everyone that worked in the AIDS clinic was on antidepressants at that time.
Really?
We were so depressed because people would come in with fevers and end up dying right in front of us.
Wow.
Or they'd get sent over to the hospital and barely make it to the hospital and die. Yeah. And it was, and these were really young people. Yeah.
Right.
And so, if an older person dies, you figure that's the way life is meant to be. That's the way life is set up. We all die eventually. But so my mother-in-law says none of us are getting out of this alive. But when young person dies, it's not fair.
Were you fearful in any way?
Well, I wasn't until in the midst of, and I don't mind telling you because it's no secret, but in the midst of all this, I got exposed to HIV and got it myself in 1991. Yeah. So it was, and then I did become. I would see people that were dying and think, is this how my life is gonna end? Yeah.
Wow.
So luckily for me, I'm so fortunate that that I made it long enough until better medications came along. Yeah.
We hear the stories of AZT and when it first came out, and people just basically overdosing on it.
You mean intentionally or
no? Because wasn't there like they weren't
toxicity?
Yeah, they weren't sure how to treat them or how much.
Yeah.
As a doctor, what was your thought process? What was your level of frustration that there wasn't a medication or a treatment available right away?
I remember in the late 80s. So one of the big discussion points in the late 80s about HIV was that, and I don't know if this is factually true, but it was the consensus was that we had a president who never even said the word AIDS.
Right.
Yeah. Or if he did, it was the sense from a lot of people was let them die, that they probably deserved it for what they did. And that had to do with a lot of the public's attitudes about being gay at that time. It was still not good. Yeah. It was one of the actually positive things about the whole gay movement was HIV. Ironically, because all of a sudden, young gay people who may have not been out to their family were dying of this illness, and they had to explain how they got it.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
There was a to stop me, you've probably heard this joke before, but there was a joke in the 80s when there were 4 groups of people that were known to have HIV, be infected with HIV, and they were IV drug users, hemophiliacs, people that received basically blood transfusion. They got blood products that were tainted with HIV. So IV drug users, hemophiliacs, people from Haiti. There were a lot of people from Haiti in the early days that had HIV. I don't know. I can tell you exactly why. Maybe it's a connection with Africa. And then the last group, of course, was homosexuals. So the joke was, if you came down with AIDS, how you could explain to your parents that you were Haitian, because that was the only one that was acceptable.
That's funny. If you're listening or watching this and you're politically correct, write the letters to my producer. That's pretty funny.
But that brought the whole discussion about being gay out of the shadows.
Now,
yeah.
What we've realized over like the last several years, especially with television, internet, the power that a president's voice has to change people's minds. Looking back, do you think if President Reagan had said the words or had acknowledged the issue, it would have made a difference today?
I guess the question would have to be, then if I'm paraphrasing what you're saying, would be, had there been more research money spent earlier, could we have saved lives? Because fewer people have been lost. And the answer is quite possibly, yeah. We're lucky that science made as much progress as it did, that the timing was good, so that at least by the mid-90s, by 1996, 97, we started to have, it was amazing. It was like a faucet being turned off. All of a sudden, people just stopped dying. Yeah, with HIV, yeah. But would it have been? Maybe. I like to think, I was at a conference where one of the doctors talked about polio. So in the 1930s, 1940s, we had a president who was affected by polio. So, so there was an impetus to do something about polio because it was affecting children, young people, all people of all ages, but excuse me. And but with HIV, we didn't have a spokesperson like that. You know, we had sort of random people that maybe were looked up to. One of the first well-known people to announce that he had AIDS and then die from AIDS was Rock Hudson, of course, in the mid-'80s. Yeah, again. Yeah. And then Magic Johnson, when Magic Johnson announced that he had it, then it was somebody that was very beloved in our country, is still, and then it became more widely thought, well, if he could get it, maybe I could get it, yeah. And that kind of turned the tide to talking about HIV and AIDS in a different way. It's not just them, yeah.
Do you think that we talk about it enough now, or have we talked enough about it that people are not as scared or respectful of what HIV can do?
Well, I know whenever I meet people that don't know me and I tell them I'm an HIV specialist, they'll oftentimes say, we don't hear anything about AIDS anymore. Does it still exist? Is it still?
Yeah.
And of course my answer is, yes, unfortunately we still have lots and lots of people with HIV. Not quite so many with AIDS if they have access to good health care, yeah. And they take their medicines faithfully, yeah. And they do what their doctor tells them, even if he nags them.
And why are you looking at me when you say that, Doc?
Oh, because you're the only person in the room here besides me, okay?
Because I've been an advocate now for almost 18 years, and people still, when I tell them that what I advocate for, they're like, "Oh, that's still killing people," or
Really? People are
that
still
people
talking
getting
about
sick.
that?
Yeah,
Really?
and I'm like, yeah,
Yeah.
it's making another way around.
Yeah.
I just always feel like there was a time there was that turning point where people weren't dying. We weren't as in people's faces about it.
Right.
And this younger generation that was born into a world with HIV don't have that fear that those of us that grew up into it did.
Right. Yeah. If you were born, any time after 1997 or 98, if you were born by that period, from that period on, you probably likely didn't know anybody that died from AIDS. Yeah. So you don't have the same fear.
Right. What goes through your mind, or how do you feel when you get somebody who's newly diagnosed?
I feel sad, but I feel hopeful. Sad because even though they have a really good chance of living a normal lifespan, still it's something that they're going to have to deal with for the rest of their lives, likely. I hope a cure comes someday. Realistically, it's probably not going to be in my lifetime, But thankfully, at least we have good medications that if people take them faithfully, they stay well.
Yeah.
But it's still sad. It's still being diagnosed with HIV is a life-changing event. And once that happens, you can never go back again. Yeah.
I tell people all the time, it's like,
yeah.
This is a club that I don't want you to join us. Like,
Exactly,
I know I'm pretty cool, but don't join this club.
You're totally cool. I wish I was as cool as you.
But it's heartbreaking to see young people who message me or get in touch with me who are newly diagnosed, and you're like
I
as
wish they didn't have to.
Yeah, as an advocate, I'm always wondering, like, what else could I do to get the message out? It's always a little. It knocks me down a couple of pegs, I guess.
Yeah. I'm sure you've done other pieces about PrEP, so we don't need to talk about that.
But we can still talk about it in a minute. Okay, let me. So, over the years, because now, how long have you been practicing in the HIV field?
Since 1985, so that's 33 years, so a third of a century. Yeah.
Now, other than the obvious, like medication and treatments, what has been the biggest change that you've seen over the last 33 years?
Well, the biggest change definitely would be when people stop dying. They do, in some places they still do. I'm really lucky in that, and I have it easy in that my patient population, by and large, are well-educated people. They don't have to worry about where their next meal is going to come from. They have a roof over their head. So in that sense, my patient population has a little easier time than a lot of patients do, and a lot of doctors' patients do, that have bigger problems. If you don't know where your next meal is going to come from, taking a pill every day is a little bit lower on the priority list. Right. Yeah. You have to eat to survive. Yeah.
At what point, because for the most part, and we're trying to break away from it's the gay thing, but heterosexuals, females, did you ever get to see patients?
Sure.
Other than gay men?
Yes. Yeah. It's in my patient population. It's still gay men is still the majority, but absolutely, I have a number of women with HIV. I have one of my guys who was born to an HIV positive mom, and he's now 26. So he's lived his whole life with it. It's all he knows. Yeah. I have a couple of my men who are married to women that are hemophiliacs that have HIV, have had it since they were young. So most of their lives they've dealt with it. Certainly, I think you're alluding to the biggest numbers for new infections are in especially women of color,
right?
Latinas and African American women. Yeah. So,
Do you find that the acceptance of a diagnosis is very different from one group to another?
wow. I guess the best answer I could give you would be an example of one of my women patients that happens to be Latina, and she has 4 grown children, and she's had HIV for 20 years and still has never told her own children.
Wow.
Adults. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
I find it.
So, yeah, she's a wonderful mom, but have never had that discussion yet. And that kind of brings to mind something that I have very limited experience with, and that's that in the Latino population, my sense is that it's not talked about so much. That's the one example I can use. You probably have a lot more knowledge of that than I do.
Yeah, and it's true, which is why a lot of my advocacy work earlier on was in the Latino community to make sure that we got all that. We got the word out, and we had the conversations, and we broke down
Keep
those taboos, yeah. But it's, even I got tired after a while because it is a hard wall to break through. The cultural, the religious,
culture?
Our religious beliefs are so. Yeah, you know the word I'm trying to say.
Yes,
There's so instilled in us that it's so hard, even as even as first generation, second, third generations, you still can't talk about it. So it's really hard to do.
Yeah, and that worries me, and that frustrates us because that's kind of a barrier to, if you can't talk about it, then how do you get people to realize that they might be at risk,
right?
That they should be using protection.
Yeah. So for anybody watching or listening, and you're part of the Latino community, have the conversations. Definitely get in touch with me, and we'll talk about it, and we'll give you the words to use to make sure that you get the word across. Because sometimes you can't use the same discussions, you can't use the same sentences to get the word across. You have to be creative. So
not just you, but also depending on where they live, their local ASO, AIDS Services Organization. Yeah. If a gay and lesbian, if they're, if that's something that's a resource for them, if they have a gay and lesbian center, but yeah.
And even if you're listening to this or watching and you're straight and you're like, definitely still go to your gay and lesbian resource center. They are probably the best people to help you cross that gap and get the information that you need. So don't underestimate.
Right.
Don't let your sexuality stop you from getting the information that you need.
And of course, the other thing that I'm not an expert in, but we haven't even alluded to, is bisexuality.
Well, with all this new
right.
pan and asexuals and
the
younger
gender fluid,
the younger generation,
I'm ignorant about. But
I don't get it either. It's so hard to sometimes get the message across because you have to be so politically correct that you can't just put it out there. You have to find the right words,
right?
And it makes getting the messages across even harder now. So I think. So we're at the point now where we share some words of wisdom with my listeners and viewers. So, Dr. Thomas Lochner, what words of wisdom do you have for the people listening?
Laughter is the best medicine. I know you're a person of faith. I'm not. My faith is kind of wavers a lot of times. I hope there's a life after this. I hope that I get to see my mom again someday. But I'm not totally convinced that there is. So my words of wisdom would be, make the most out of this life, just in case there's nothing after this. Be who you are. Don't pretend to be someone you're not. And be the best you can be. Make the most out of life. Yeah.
Very cool. I like that.
Yeah.
Now, I normally don't do this, but I'm going to go with you. You're about to go through some new life changes and new chapters in your life. Can we talk about that a little bit?
You mean by becoming trans?
Yes. People did not
This
know.
would be really sad. People would feel really bad for me if I decided to choose that. Yeah. That would make me happy. Yeah, you're alluding to my retirement.
Yes.
Yeah. The next phase of my life.
Which is one of the other reasons that not only do I always found you interesting and found your story interesting, but I'm sad because you are retiring.
I'll miss you, and I'll miss a lot of my patients. Yeah.
What was the motivator? I know that there's a story about the building, but
I'm old.
Is that it?
The timing, it's a lot of things. It happens that it's a good time for my partner who desperately needs to retire from his job. You're right, my lease happened to be up here. I didn't want at this place in life renew for another 5 years. Well, I guess I could have. It would ideally, I'm in a place where I would like to work 2 or 3 days a week and not 5 days a week. And the other thing is that this is I didn't think that I would ever feel this, but after being a doctor for this many years now, sometimes it's a challenge helping people to handle their problems all the time. Yeah. And it's been an honor to do it as much as I've done whatever hopefully good I've done in my life. But I'm looking for at least less of that. Yeah. I still want to do things. I want to do, my good friend Dr. Lee, who's Chinese, taught me the 3 things. Dr. Lee said 3 things we need in life to be happy: someone to love, something meaningful to do with our lives. It can be being a caregiver for someone. It can be volunteering. It can come in so many different, but whatever it is for you as an individual, something, it could be creating podcasts where you're helping other people out there in the internet world that you don't even know. But something meaningful to do with your life. And then some things to look forward to is the third one. Yeah. And so whatever I will do in the next phase of my life, it's got to somehow give myself some meaning. Yeah. I won't totally leave medicine. It's too much a part of me,
Yeah, I haven't known a doctor who's retired who's completely gone off and done nothing again. Has Dr. Thomas Lochner taken away from civilian Thomas Lochner a lot, or have they been able to work together?
Any sacrifice that I made, I did it gladly. Yeah. It's a real honor to do what I have done for a living, what I do for a living. People tell me their most intimate secrets that sometimes they don't tell other people. Sometimes I get to be there with people when they're passing, it's there's certainly a lot of other careers that I could have had that would have paid better dollar-wise, certainly than primary care. But anything that's more rewarding, I don't think so. Not for me. Yeah.
So civilian Thomas Lochner and Dr. Lochner have been together on this journey. They haven't taken away from each other.
Right. I would say that's fair. Yeah.
What have you learned about yourself in these 33 years?
What have I learned? I guess I'm trying to sum it up in a few profound words, and I don't know if I'm going to come up with that. For me, I find that I get more out of life by giving. Yeah. So whatever I've done that my career that's given, I've gotten a lot more back in return. I'm not so noble.
That's really cool.
It's true. Yeah.
So What's in your plans? Painting, writing a book? Your
I'm not that artistic. And I'm definitely not coordinated, so it will not be athleticism. Okay?
Going fishing.
Yeah.
What are you looking forward to?
Well, we're moving to Northern California to a place where there are fewer people. It's far enough from San Francisco that you can't commute down to San Francisco. It's a little town called Healdsburg of about 10,000 people in Northern California. I'm looking closer to spending more time. I'm looking, you know what I'm really looking forward to is, and this is an aside, it's my partner. My partner's job is tremendously stressful. And I'm really looking forward to having him be less stressed in life.
Nice.
I'll probably still, my thought is probably that, stop me, I probably told you this, but there's, in Sonoma County, there's, in a little town called Healdsburg, there is a clinic for all the migrant farm workers, there are a lot of migrant farm workers because of the wineries and farms up there. So there's actually a little clinic in town for the migrant farm workers who don't have insurance. So my thought is maybe to do that just a couple days a week, again, to feel like I'm doing something meaningful with my life. Yeah. I can only watch so much of Ellen as much as I love her.
I was about to ask, my next question was, what have you missed out on that you'll be able to do now? Do you feel like you missed out on anything?
Yeah, I'm going to catch up on all the episodes of Big Brother.
The new season's coming up. So.
That's so not me. Yeah, it's fine for someone else, but yeah. I don't know. We only get so much time. Whenever you're young, it seems like life is going to last forever. But, now at 64, I realize that I'm way past the halfway point. I don't tolerate anyone or anything that's wasting my time. I want to make sure whatever I do, that I make the most out of it, even if it's just walking on the beach. That I'm taking it in the experience as much as I can. Yeah, okay. I don't want to look back and think, you know what, I wish I had done blank.
Well, you're still full of energy, and you've inspired so many people to do. I mean, I can only speak for.
You're kind.
And before I get emotional, but I'd like for you to look in the camera, and could you give a message to somebody who's newly diagnosed, and some words of hope or some words of inspiration, something to let people who are newly diagnosed that they can take with them.
Okay. Take care of yourself. If you take your medicines faithfully, they work. I think my wish for you would be that someday you feel the way that I feel about having HIV, and that's that I feel my life has actually been richer because I've had the experience. It's made me appreciate things more. I wouldn't have signed up for this journey, but now that I'm here, I make the best of it. Yeah, and so that's my wish for you. Make the most out of life. Don't waste any more time than you absolutely have to being sad. Yeah.
Because I definitely have told people that, no, this is not something that I would have wanted, but I've met so many great people. I've been to such great places to talk about advocacy, to share my story. Some adventures that I would not have had HIV not been part of my life.
Your life is richer because of that.
And
ironically.
Yeah, and even now with being a cancer survivor, that's taking me on journeys that I normally would never have had the opportunity to do.
You're an amazing person.
So, thank you.
You're amazing to have worked through all that you've been through in the last couple of years. People that don't even know you have no idea what an inspiration you are to those of us who know you well. Yeah.
Well,
it's true.
I tell people I'm a reflection of the people around me, and definitely you have made a big impact in my life.
I'm humble. Thank you.
I wanted this interview not just because I think you're great and I want people to know who you are, but as a personal tribute to the work that you've done with me. When I came to you, I was a little disgruntled by my old doctor, and you kind of just said, okay, well, let's start fresh and see what we can get you. And then you helped me out, and through the whole cancer process, you were there to hold my hand through it, even when I needed a push more than just a holding. Like I told you in the beginning, there is the love-hate, because who wants to get called on for their bullshit? And you definitely called me out on mine. But
it's tough love.
I think that it's really great when people see your potential and you can't see it because you're hurting or you're in pain or you're just so in the dark that you can't see the light that's there. And you definitely have been that for me.
Thank you.
It's
very humble.
It's great to be able to come in here and you're not only concerned about what's going on physically, but what's going on in my life. I've definitely shed some tears with you. You give the best hugs. And
I learned that from Dr. Levine, by the way.
And
hug your patients.
So for doctors who are watching this, it's okay to hug your patients.
Yeah.
And we appreciate it because sometimes with everything going on in the world, sometimes you don't feel human. And when you're an advocate and when you're speaking for other people, you kind of forget that you're a patient too. And coming into your office, you made me feel like this was my time. This is my time to let go and be okay with that. And I guess that would be my last question. Is there, being a doctor, but also being a patient, do you ever forget that you're a patient, or is that easy to forget during the day that you're not part of this community too, that you're just a doctor? Does that make sense? Does the question make sense? Because for instance, for me to go advocate, there are times in the day where I forget that I'm positive, and I'm just an advocate, and I'm just a voice for somebody, or
it becomes a piece of who we are.
Yeah.
Like you have brown eyes, I have blue eyes, and you have brown hair, I have gray hair. Yeah. Yeah, it just becomes a piece of us, of our fabric. Yeah.
Because not everybody understands that you're not thinking all day long, I'm positive, or me, I'm a cancer survivor. It's not in the top of my head all day long.
That brings up a good point, Danny, that I think that oftentimes when I first encounter someone who's newly diagnosed, I explain to them that it takes about 3 months before it starts to become, you start to become kind of okay with it. Yeah. It starts to become kind of background noise in your life. In the beginning, once you're diagnosed, it's all you think about, right? And then gradually, it's a loss. It's the loss of your being HIV negative. Huh? Yeah. And so like any other loss, if it's you lose a loved one, it's a loss, and it takes time to adjust to that. We do go on. We have to.
And that's definitely been my motivator throughout my 18 years positive, is you just have to keep going. You just have to. There is this
alternative.
There's this inner need to do something with your life, and it's not just to sit on the sidelines and watch what happens. So I want to say on behalf, I'm going to speak on behalf of all your patients. Thank you so much for these 33 years. We love you. You're such a huge part of our lives, and I, for one, am going to miss you tremendously when you leave.
I'll miss you too.
So I'll have to trek up to Northern California just to find you up in some hill somewhere fishing, and just so you can give me some tough love when I need it.
And I don't know if you get thanked enough for spending your time and putting the thought that you do into this, Danny, just to try to help other people. It's a mutual admiration society, but it speaks of your character.
Well, thank you. This is my calling. This is my office.
It is, and you do it well.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Yeah. Well, before I get all mushy, thank you everybody for listening. We've been sitting here with Dr. Thomas Lochner, my doctor, because he's still my doctor. I still have one more visit. He is retiring. For those of you who are watching this with patients and you didn't know, I found out the hard way that he was leaving. But such an inspiring man. I hope and I know we're going to hear more stuff about him in the future. But for now, I want to thank everybody for listening. This has been Put It Together with Dr. Thomas Lochner. I want to thank my producer, Mr. Kevin Moyers. Please follow us at abnormalentertainment.com or on the Facebook page, Put It Together Podcast, where you can get all the shows on the network. And remember, you can find us also on YouTube. So if you want to see this video of the interview, you may watch it there. For now, I want to thank you, Doctor, for taking the time.
Thanks very much.
Everybody listening, this is Daniel Garza with Put It Together Podcast saying, hey, put it together.
Stay strong.
This is how I put it together. This is how I put it together. This is how I put it together.
Subscribe to Put It Together on iTunes, Stitcher, and at abnormalentertainment.com/putittogether. Find Put It Together on Facebook and tweet Daniel at Lil Messican, LILMESICAN. And for more podcasts, comics, books, movies, and more, head to abnormalentertainment.com.
You've been listening to the Abnormal Entertainment Network.